The sun was setting behind the dusty hills of Willow Creek, painting the sky in hues of amber and sorrow. Inside a small, creaky wooden house stood Elena, a 17-year-old girl with eyes as soft as morning dew and a heart that still dreamed of freedom. Her father, burdened with debt after a failed harvest, had made a deal with Henry Dalton, a man old enough to be her grandfather. As her mother silently adjusted Elena's ivory dress, the girl's trembling hands clutched at the lace, trying to hold on to whatever courage she could find. "It's for the family," her mother whispered, though her own eyes were wet with shame. Outside, the church bells began to toll, each sound a reminder that Elena's life was no longer hers. Henry waited at the altar, his weathered face hard and emotionless. The crowd whispered, some with pity, others with envy. Elena walked slowly, her steps heavy as if dragging the weight of 1,000 broken promises. When she reached him, Henry extended his hand. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then placed hers in his, the skin of youth meeting the roughness of age. By the time the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," tears silently fell down her cheeks. The following days were quiet but cruel. The grand ranch house on the hill became her gilded cage. Henry rarely spoke, except to command. His sons, grown men themselves, treated her with cold indifference, some with cruel smirks, others with quiet disgust. At night, Elena would sit by the window, looking out at the moon, whispering to herself that maybe, someday, someone would see her pain. But one evening, while feeding the horses, she met Luke, the ranch's youngest worker, a kind-eyed boy her own age, who had come from a poor background just like her. Their first exchange was simple, a shared glance, a shy smile, but it was enough to spark something forbidden. Over the weeks, Luke began helping her with chores, teaching her how to ride, how to breathe in the open air again. He never treated her like property, he treated her like a person. One night, when she found him repairing a fence under the moonlight, she asked, "Do you ever wish you could just run away?" Luke looked at her, his eyes soft but steady. "Every day, but maybe not alone anymore." Those words lingered in her heart long after he left. But secrets have a way of being discovered. Henry's eldest son, Charles, noticed Elena's new spark, the laughter that returned to her face, the quiet joy in her step. One evening, he followed her to the barn and saw her with Luke, their hands brushing as they whispered beneath the lantern light. Rage consumed him. By morning, the entire ranch knew. Henry stood at the dining table, his face red with fury, his voice shaking with rage. "You think you can shame me, girl?" he roared. Luke was dragged out by 2 men, beaten until blood stained the dirt. Elena fell to her knees, begging, "Please, don't hurt him. He's innocent." Henry's eyes turned cold as steel. "No, girl," he growled. "You are." That night, locked in her room, Elena pressed her palms against the glass, tears blurring her vision. The man she never chose had become her captor. But deep inside, something else awoke, something stronger than fear. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch that once silenced Elena became her battlefield. Luke was gone, sent away to some far-off town, she was told. But rumors whispered that he'd survived. The thought kept her alive. Every day, she played the obedient wife, silent and graceful. But inside her mind, she planned. She learned where Henry kept his papers, how his sons managed the ranch, where the keys were hidden. And when the time came, she would strike not with a gun, but with the truth. One afternoon, she overheard Charles arguing with a banker. The ranch was in trouble. Henry's fortune wasn't as vast as he pretended. It was collapsing under debts and lies. That night, Elena snuck into Henry's study. By the dim lantern light, she found the documents that proved it all. But before she could escape, the door creaked open. Henry stood there, his shadow long and dark across the room. "You think you can take from me, girl?" he hissed. Elena turned, her heart pounding. "You already took everything," she replied, voice trembling but fierce. It was Luke. He was bruised but alive, his eyes burning with determination. "Step away from her," he said, his hand gripping the old revolver he'd taken from one of Henry's guards. For the first time, Henry hesitated. The room filled with the echo of heavy breaths and clashing wills. "You don't scare me, boy," Henry sneered. "Then you don't know what love looks like," Luke answered. In that moment, something shifted. The old man saw not fear but defiance, not weakness but power. You can't buy a soul, Henry Dalton. You can own land, cattle, money, but not me. She dropped the marriage ring onto the table. It clinked like the closing of a chain. Luke reached for her hand, and together they walked out into the night as the first drops of rain began to fall. By morning, the story spread across Willow Creek. The powerful rancher had been left by his young bride, his secrets exposed, his debts unveiled. The people who once whispered behind Elna's back now spoke her name with respect. She returned to her old home, helping her father rebuild his farm, not with gold, but with strength earned through pain. Luke stayed by her side, not as a savior, but as a partner. Months later, when spring returned, they rode together past the old ranch. The land that once imprisoned her now looked peaceful. Do you regret any of it? Luke asked quietly. Elena smiled faintly, looking at the horizon. Only that I didn't find my voice sooner. And as the sun rose over the fields, painting the world in light, she whispered, freedom is worth any price. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more powerful emotional Western stories that remind us, even in silence, a woman's courage can change everything.